larger board, and we're kind of expanding, trying to find ways to really support the authors in the area. Ways that we try to support everybody through membership is, these meetings we have. We also offer 2 workshops a year. In fact, our first workshop, our summer workshop, is coming up next month. We also have critique groups, and we try to have events that, allows our authors to sell their books at and get their names out there. So there's a lot of benefits to joining CAW and supporting us as we try to support the community. Announcements. We did do the Rose Lawn event, which we've met some new faces. I want to say thank you to all of our volunteers for the event. For these 2-day events, it can be quite a lot to ask someone to man a table for 10 hours a day. So it was nice to be able to break it up into just hourly shifts. So that was really nice. It was really successful, I want to say, for spreading the word and just letting people know that we're out here and what we're doing. And we were able to sell a few books. So that's always really nice. We sold a couple anthologies, but mostly we sold books from some of our members. So that was really good. Wanted to talk about Substack. I was surprised as we were making phone calls to everybody, for all of our published authors, if they wanted to supply some of their books for us to sell at the event, that they were unaware that we had the event, or that, it was an option for them to sell their books. So I just want to encourage everyone to check your Substack. If you're not getting the messages, I know that we've been posting some stories from the anthology, but a lot of the announcements from what we're doing for the group, those events and our schedule and stuff like that, it's also posted on Substack. So if you're not getting it, if you'll come talk to me or Kayla or Chris, and we can make sure that everyone's getting the word out. As far as the anthology is concerned, Katie wanted to let everyone know that the first round of edits is done and it's looking really good, and that we should start getting our work back and make those tweaks on those. Next month is our workshop. So it's going to be a members only meeting next month on the 16th, same room. We're going to have George Weinstein and Kim Conray from Atlanta Writers Club here. And it's going to be about self-publishing like a pro and marketing like a boss. So it should be a really nice workshop for those of you that are interested in self-publishing. Give us some idea on, routes to do that and steps to do that. But also anyone who's interested in traditional publishing, you're going to have to market your book yourself no matter what pathway you choose. And so it should be a very relatable and relevant workshop for everybody. And Mandy Cantrell. All right. Author of Spiderflies, A Fair in August, and the Trace series. Tonight we're going to be talking about the art of series writing, how to plan and write successful series from concept to execution.
All right, thank
Not
you.
dead,
No pressure. Well, I'm so used to standing, but this actually feels better, So I'm going to try to sit. Maybe I'll pace. But yeah, as she said, I'm Mandy Cantrell, and I did not intend to write a series, but yet here I am, 4 books in, and I have about 3 more planned. So I'm a little bit, I don't want to say nervous, but I'll tell you something about me. If you don't know me already, I would feel more confident walking in here, and she might say, here's a topic, wing it. Like, for some reason, that's my comfort level. But I try to really organize this, y'all. So hopefully I won't trip on my own words here by actually writing something down. So my book series is called The Trace Books, and it's young adult / adult. Again, I did not intend to do this, but I have these here for reference. I'm not trying to pitch anything or sell anything, but as we go along, I want to be able for you guys to have a visual when I talk about these. So if you are curious or anything or want my website, you're welcome to talk to me afterwards. But anyway, today what I want to talk about is writing a book series. So we'll talk about pros and cons and discuss strategies as well as the best way to go about writing a series. So obviously some of this is just going to be in my opinion, my experience, and there's only a good billion, things out there where you can learn about this. But this is one, and I'll tell you, when you said that what the workshop's going to be about, I was so excited because that's a good follow up to this, because obviously I cannot get into tonight I think Katie had it like from beginning to end, but you get into all the publishing and all that. I mean, it's something in and of itself. So I think that would be good if anybody's interested in doing a series. That's going to be a really good follow up. Let's see, but first I'll tell you how I came to write this series, a little bit about my experience, because I can't go into the ins and outs of it without telling you, how I came to write a series. So I'm not going to tell you to do it this way though necessarily. That's not that I did it a wrong way per se, but it was not a planned way. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is a planned way to do this. And maybe this can be inspirational, just to get out there and do the thing instead of writing until it's all perfect. Because I don't know about y'all, but we can sometimes become full-time students in learning about writing, and we don't share necessarily what we're writing. We don't get it published, or we don't put it out there because we're holding on to it so we can have this like perfect piece of art. And that's amazing. But, and I'm not saying by any means to get out there and just throw something out there that's not prepared and not ready. But does anybody feel that way? Like you're holding it? I'm not looking at you, Tammy.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I thought you might, but I don't know. Do y'all feel that way, or is everybody working on something right now, or do you have something out? Okay, are you working on something? I'm trying to make like the full owl contact here. Anyway, so my story is obviously not a perfect story, is what I'm getting to. So it's maybe you'll find it a little clever though with my creativity. I don't know. But for all the things that I didn't know yet in the world of writing, I did make up for in being clever or creative. And when all else fails, there's bluffing. Done a lot of bluffing. Does anybody else bluff when they're trying to? You're like right in my. I'm not. I see you in the back. I'm not really looking at you. You're the easiest to look at. You're right here. I'm not going to call out anybody. I promise. But it is an art form, and we can be a little creative. It's hard for some people that are very by the book to step out. But I think there's there's that sweet spot, right, in between, and that's what we hope for, that we use our creativity, but we also do some things by the book because there's those expectations. Yeah. But anyway, we do forget sometimes in all the lectures and the books and every which way you can learn information these days to remain human and tell a human story. So we talked about that a while back, AI. So that really wasn't a reference to that. But anyway, we don't get too caught up on rules that we don't take a chance. I feel like I should be way back here. All right. So when I began writing this was going to be my main new script. It was not this, had nothing to do with this. It was going to be my first book. I don't know if you guys feel that like you've got the book. Does anybody have the book, or are you guys just writing for fun? Do you have a book that's like going to be your breakthrough? You?
I thought so, the draft 2, but now like draft 4, it's a dumpster fire. So we'll see. It might
I haven't read any of your
It might be
fires, so.
a book.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I thought I had the book, but that's also because I was naive and maybe a little full of myself at the time. But I was not ready, and so this book just kept going and going and going. And the manuscript was huge, and turns out it was more of a collection of books. So I've now taken several stories from that story and created books, but that was not what I was thinking at the time. So what happened is I had a mentor at the time in the writing world, and she was published multiple times. And the advice that she gave me was to take something, whether it was from that or just a small story, and sort of stretch that, and that be a stepping stone. So I did that. I stepped away from my, the book, and I made this right here, Tracing the Devil. So it's a novella that was it's a very quick read, and it was fun to write, and it was a chapter in that first book, and I thought that was going to be it. That was going to be all that I did with that. But I had people who read the book and was like, okay, and then what? And so because it was sort of that Twilight Zone, like classic, twist at the end, but what happens? So I was like, that's it. That's what happened. And I kind of wanted to leave it that way, but Anyway, I have a blog on my website if you want to check it out called I Should Have Had an Agent Behind the Web of Spider Flies, which is another book. If you check that out, it goes into all the details, so I won't go into all that here. But I did go from writing one thing to this. So I say that to say, when you think about writing a series, we're going to go through this in a minute, of the steps that you take. I didn't take those steps, but I did realize that a series for me was a way to go. You start out small, you can keep adding to it, and that's basically what my manuscript was a lot of books into one. So I went about it that way. And my idea was that I would return to my manuscript. But that actually came way, way, way later. So
Can we jump into questions when we have one? Or is
yeah,
it?
no, it won't mess me up.
So, what was your psychology when you had the book? How did you think of yourself and what you were doing? When you're like, you know what, I'm gonna keep that big umbrella up there. I'm gonna take this element that I like a lot. I'm gonna write this other story.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Okay, so I think I'm answering this correctly. So, or what you're meaning by that.
Yeah.
So what I did was I just started flipping through the material I had. When she said that, because I don't know if this is good or bad, but my tendency is once I get an idea of something, I jump all in. So I was like all into this big manuscript, and then when she says that, do something small, I'm like all in on doing that, right? So I think I'm not going to write something new. I'm going to see if I have something here that it won't matter if I take it out of that book.
but you weren't thinking, I'm gonna write a little story.
Yeah.
You were just
yeah.
gonna write, you're all in. It's
Yes. So when I flipped through the chapters, there was one that could be its own standalone story because the girl in that book is telling a story. And so she didn't have to tell that story. It was easy to take out. And so I took that out and I'm like breaking that down. How could this be bigger? Why was this and why was that? And who is this? And how did they become that? So I just kept stretching and stretching, and it was very rough to begin with. And for a while, it was very rough. But that's what I did was I found something that was already there because I didn't want to wait, because that was going to push me even farther away from that original manuscript. Is that kind of sort of
Yes.
answer? Okay, but that's where I was with it. So anyway, so after I did this first one, I did return to my manuscript. I messed around with that thing that just kept like silly putty and stretching and stretching. But they wanted more, but I was like, do I really want to do a series? So when they were saying what comes next, I'm like, you know, as I said, I didn't know that I wanted anything else. But I was then kind of antsy because it's really cool when people say, hey, what happens next? They're obviously getting invested. So what I decided to do was create a companion book. Is everybody familiar with a companion book, or have you read companion books? Like, I don't want to talk.
What necessarily goes into a companion book? What necessarily makes it a companion book versus a full-blown sequel? Is it like something like a spinoff, or?
So it's basically something to accompany that first book that what I've got here is to explain or expand upon. So the way I had it in my mind was I wanted people to still be thinking about the book that I had written without doing a full book.
So could it cover like a same like timeline, so to speak, but maybe from like a different character or something like that?
Yes, so it could do that, and it's something that sheds light on the story, like, oh, I like that extra bit.
Okay.
I like knowing that. So I'm trying to think of an example right off that might be universal.
There's a trilogy of romance novels that does that, where they mention one character and she's in a cast, and you're like, well, how the heck did she get in the cast? And then there's an entire book explaining what happened.
There you go. That's a companion book.
Okay.
So mine was a little more directly related to the main character. And I wanted to do something, again, that was quick and get it out there. So this is what I thought was clever. Take it for whatever you think it is. But that's stupid, whatever it is you think, but just don't say it to me. No, so what I decided was, in order to do something quick, I wanted to do something that was with flaws. So that sounds
I'm sorry, what?
backwards. That had flaws.
Oh, flaws,
So nobody
okay.
tells you to write stuff with flaws. But what I mean by that, in my particular situation, was I wrote the boys' journal. So when this book takes place, it's ninth grade, but you don't exactly know how the guy gets here. He's like the bad boy of this high school. Without going too much into my series, he's got this dark past. Well, obviously that would continue through the series. So as a companion book, what I did was just take his year before, when the other characters weren't. So, you know, such an important part. And so he's writing it just like he was writing a journal for school, and he's telling, you know, what's going on in his life. So you see it firsthand. but he's a 15-year-old kid, and so there's misspellings and stuff, and I was able to just do some of those on purpose and let some of those go, and that's this Trace's notebook. So it's literally the size of a notebook, and this side note for Amazon, not that I'm bad mouthing Amazon because I use them a lot, but KDP would not let me use this. It was only supposed to be this because they said we don't publish notebooks. I'm like, I know it's not a notebook. They're like, we don't publish notebooks. So we did that a few times and said the same things. So then I put this on it's like an old school desk that I used for my book launch party, and that became the cover. And then they couldn't say it's a notebook anymore. But the font is like all over the place. There's different fonts in this, and there's math problems, and there's song lyrics, and just thoughts that this boy's having. So you see how it's not exactly its own book, but it is in fact a prequel. So like I'm gonna pass this around so you can see. Just,
Side note, song lyrics, do you have to worry about copyright? Would you have to do
no,
that?
they were the boys' song lyrics. So it's like
So
he's
he
just
just
sitting in
made
his
up his
room,
own
he's just
song.
making up stuff.
Okay.
And I didn't know that I could write 15-year-old boys while I was doing this. So I was like, yeah, right on, that's cool. So I did that, and it's interesting because when I'm at events and stuff, the like teens that come and look at the books are always drawn to that one, and they like I think they like that it's a little bit rebellious. They like that it's not typical and doesn't follow all the rules and that's the character in it. He's not following rules. So anyway, that worked for me. I would have to know each of your situations to say, hey, you might want to think about this. It might not work for your situation. Which, by the way, is I don't know if you guys are just here by chance or if you're interested in running a series or you have a series. Show of hands.
Working on.
Do any of those apply?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, did anybody have any questions about that?
So, I know for mine, can it get a little jarring because like I have a trio, and that book 1 is focusing on one character, and then book 2 is focusing on like another character in the book.
Yes.
Like, is that gonna jive well, so to speak, or like with it still like bouncing around of like, hey, I have my audience for like this 16-year-old boy. Are they then gonna throw their hands up and go, I don't want to read about a girl?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, because I did actually think about doing. I mean, this is mostly about a boy and a girl, and it's a love story of sorts. But I thought about doing her journal at some point, and I've balanced on that because I don't know if it'll just be like, we don't want to hear her like gooey gooey, sweet and cute, 1988 stuff. I don't know if it would play the same way, but I think that there's so many different ways to write a series. I mean, people bounce around and people do use different characters. I think that's something that you could actually play up.
Okay.
So if they're not that crazy about that, like these two are super short, like read them in an afternoon. That one read in an hour because it's just like somebody wrote their notes down. And hey, you don't have to look shameful. Just go on in. So I think that's a marketing strategy then. How did you feel about this? Wait till you hear about this. I think it's just how you spin it. I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's interesting.
So the difference between a companion story and a sequel, if I understand correctly, is that a sequel is a standalone story with the same characters that's related, whereas a companion book is more about almost like an addendum or
Yes.
an appendix, where you find out more information about the characters.
Yes, that's exactly
Okay.
right. In fact, when I was thinking about this initially, I thought, what would be neat if I could do because it's old school high school and it's writing notes, and so I thought about just having the notes in a book between the two of them, and then it would balance. And I was like, no, I want something a little more that explains more about this boy, and so that's when I wrote that. And if I do the journal style with the girl, I think it will be, which she's never named in it. She's just Trace's girl. She's just the girl. And there's reasons for that, but you have to read the series. So, but I think that if I do that later on, it'll look different from this because she's the girl, but it might make me have to write yet another additional book. It's like I'm planning about 3 more. So that might be a 4th one because it would be yet another companion. So.
How did you channel a 15-year-old boy?
I don't know, man, it just came out.
You
It's a
have
it's a
one.
dangerous thing.
I have one, but he does not like Trace. But he does like Trace. He likes these books, and his friends like these books. And I do have a 15-year-old boy, but he's more responsible than I am, so I can't even compare.
But you wrote the book long before he was 15, though, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was 5 years ago.
So you didn't even have him as source material.
I did.
You had to reflect on your own encounters with 15-year-old boys, presumably when you were a 15-year-old.
Yes, and that's true because you're thinking back to the late 80s, which is very different kid from the most part. So, but yeah, it was fun. And I mean, that's any character, right? You think, at first you're kind of awkward with the character, and then you're like, oh, I bet they would like this. And it's really cool if you just just put their name at the top and just start writing stuff down about them. What do they like to eat? What do they like to do with their free time? Just kind of get a whole feel of your character. But I think sometimes I just have something in my head and it's just almost like I channel that through. I don't know, y'all would have to read it and be like, that's not any kid I've ever heard of. But
I thought the things in Fireflies were seemed true to life.
okay. Thank
So
you.
I can certainly identify with a lot of them because I'm not that much older than you.
Yeah.
I can
Well,
definitely relate.
I do think that even though this is a supernatural series, it's got a lot of paranormal stuff. I still like to think that it's a true to life type story because that's what I like to write. And so I think it reads like if I had sat down and said, hey, let me tell you the story. And that's what I want it to be like. I want it to be, I have a lot of readers, and I'm not meaning to get way off on a thing, but I do have a lot of readers who are not readers. And they like this because it's just like storytelling. And that's kind of my heart for writing is the storytelling.
So with your 4 books, like, was it from that big manuscript, or was it more of like, okay, well, they said, and then what happened? So then I had to okay, I want to cover this part of Trace's life, and
Yes.
build on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say this pretty much wraps that one chapter up from that original book.
Okay.
Which, by the way, spider claws. What did I do with spider? What did I do with spider claws? Okay, well, I didn't bring it, but I guess because that wasn't relevant to this thing, but I was just expecting it to be there. Anyway, my book Spider Claws, which was later on and has nothing to do with this. A good bit of that was in that book as well. So I've chopped the heck out of this book. So even if you think your first stuff is not going to end up being your book, or you're not going to put it out there, you don't know what you might get from that
Well,
because
then
that's your
how do you
initial.
decide of what becomes your next Trace book, so to speak? Of like, okay, this has happened. We've covered 9th grade. Okay, do we just realistically go into 10th grade, or do you have an idea of like, oh, well, what if he decided to get the wild hair and then he's going to college? I
Yes.
don't know.
No, see, this is why I don't do this mess. This is why I said from the beginning, because I like this so much better. I like to not read everything that I said to have it all down. I like the questions and all. So what I did was when I did the second book that's going around, then I decided, okay, I'm in. Like I want to do the series now because I was explaining before. I was kind of getting my feet wet. Do I really want to do a series or not? And so I was like, yeah, I do, because I was liking the characters a lot, and I was liking the whole vibe. So much so that I ended up creating merchandise before it was really even known of. I did these photo shoots with the schools around here, and the 80s style, and they got the Trace shirt and they got a book for doing it, and it was just a lot of fun. I did community stuff. I did a contest for like Valentine card contest and stuff like that to begin with. Anyway, I started having fun with it. I was like, okay, I am the Trace girl. Like I'm all about this now. So when I decided I was going to do a series, then I wrote this. So this, the Tracks of Trace. So this is a mystery. It's all mystery. None of it is what I would say is horror. It's like the old stuff in the 80s that was, again, I said the Twilight Zone, but like Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt. Help me out. What's another one? Read my mind.
Well, I mean, there's the Night Gallery and
Yes.
and
Outer
other things like
Limits.
that, but they're all
Yeah.
derivative.
Yes, so all that, if you know that time period, that's the whole vibe I wanted to go with it. And actually, when I got into doing these book covers, y'all, because this was just my thing. I didn't know it was going to be my thing. I did this to look like an old bootleg tape. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm a big rock music person. So this is like a dark scavenger hunt, and you can see like this has got more. This is more. It's a little meatier. So what I decided was I didn't want it to all be like this quick read, which this book, and I don't care to pass all these around, this book, I even centered down the page because I wanted it to be such a quick read that, so I didn't follow the rules, y'all. We're gonna talk about rules in a second, but Mandy didn't follow the rules. I just did mine. I did what was creative because that's what I like to do. It's just creative stuff. It just happens to be now that I'm writing. I did a lot of other creative stuff too in my life. But anyway, so this became more of a story when I'm getting to your answer, believe it or not. This story became beyond that. Okay, so it takes place immediately, like the second after the first book. So you're looking at getting those answers that people wanted to begin with. But the companion book gave you an idea of why these things might happen. So you did get something from that, even though you don't have to read it, that companion book. So this does say, so what if Trace did this? What if Trace did that? What if Trace couldn't be found? And so, you know, they're searching for Trace, and that doesn't give anything away. But what this allowed me to do, and I did put this in here, so I'm not getting too far off, but what this allowed me to do was I was just learning. All this is in 5 years, y'all. So I give myself a little grace on imperfections and learning curves and all that. But what I did was, we'll talk a little bit about, you know, creating a Bible for your work. And so you have all your information. This allowed me to do like a timeline and everything out in the open. So I was learning it as the reader was learning it, because what I decided to do, again, clever, hopefully, and I decided to take the storyline and say, hey, we've got to look at some records. So there was looking at records that were trying to find things. If everybody remembers scavenger hunts in the 80s, and you're trying to find a clue to get to the next clue. So it still incorporates that young adult type theme. And while saying, okay, here's the records, here's who the family is, why did he become this, and oh, we didn't know about this person in the family, what does that mean? So I did that kind of publicly, saying, hey, here's all the information of who he is, who his family is, and I just wrapped it up as records. So she's finding this information, she's getting these clues. Some he wants her to know, some she's finding out other ways. And so that kind of pulls together in a way of, well, what if Trace did this? And after that, we got this.
Were these questions that you know, because each one's answering a set of questions?
Yes.
How much of that was just generated from your own brain? Because you're thinking, you know, if I was reading this right now, well, what would I think? Or it was a mental puzzle for you? Or was it feedback from other people too?
It was both, because I did, the fact that I did jump out there with like merchandise and contests and doing all these things, I started, which is not necessarily what I would suggest for everybody, because there's a lot of money and time and energy involved in that when you get these ideas that you can do all the things. But it opened up a conversation all over the place. You know, everything that I was at, everything that I got to be involved with, I could talk to different people and say, what would you like to see? Or how do you feel about this? And they'd say, oh, I liked it when this happened. And I started taking note of and I encourage people to send me not just their reviews, but what are your thoughts? And I got to see what were the common denominators there. But I tend to write a little bit selfishly, which they tell you do not do that. Don't. It's so weird. It's like, seems to me the only art form that they tell you, don't do it your way. Do it all our way. Did you see all this list here? You did not make that list. So I think being kind of small time and doing self-publishing, I went the other way too, but the self-publishing allows me to do it my way. And I think that's more important to me, even than the sales, because I'm looking for my audience. And I mean, it hurts the pocketbook sometimes, you know, when you're like, maybe if I did do that checklist, it might be different. But for right now, I'm happy with where I'm at with it. But I like to take all that in and kind of funnel it down into what I was thinking about the character to stay on track, and be true to who I think he is and who the other characters are. Does that answer that in a broad way? I did decide along the way, hey, I want to make these, grow in substance and page count, all that stuff. So this one obviously is, this one's thicker. It's still an easy read because of how it's written, but this is the origin story. So you're taking it back to the 70s, actually, which was a lot of fun because I like that too. So each of these books has musical reference. I'll say I like to do like a soundtrack to my books. And so this one got to go back to the 70s and vinyl and all that. So Tracy's
You haven't
actually
played a soundtrack list in years. I know that's a thing that a lot of at least for what genre I'm reading, a lot of authors nowadays do include like a soundtrack list of.
yes.
Okay.
So that's on the. I don't have that for these, but that is on. Was always my plan for Spider-Blood. And I keep looking down like I'm going to pick that up.
Okay.
But I was not planning on talking about Spider-Blood tonight. But yes, that was the plan. So when I do the hardcover, I'm going to do the QR code and have all them
Okay.
because I do have that planned out.
I
for
just
things.
noticed that that's been a thing that's become more popular lately.
Yes.
That you
And I
kind of
love
just have a soundtrack to it.
So a fun thing, when I say Trace fans, so when one of the Trace fans that I know said that when she was reading Spiderflies, she's like, I loved all the music in this, but she said when I read Spiderflies, every time you mentioned something, I searched that song and put it on while I was reading that period. It's like, oh my god, I love that.
That's
Like,
awesome.
yeah, that's the kind of fans I guess I'm looking for. Is not that goes above sales when somebody says, hey, I was interested in why you picked this and what that sounds like. And I had worried a little bit, like, what if people don't know these songs? Are they going to get the feel of what I'm talking about? But I have talked to people who are like, I have no idea who you're talking about. You did not lose me at all. I got the idea of what you meant.
Well,
Yeah.
You're building the ecology, the ecosystem
Yeah.
of your story, and it has flavor, maybe your own, a little bit of you in there.
Yes.
I mean, I remember, Tara and Meryl Manson and,
Yeah, that's inspired.
a little bit Slayer, but you mentioned those lyrics or
That's the
the thing with
90s.
the
Yeah.
music, right?
Yes, I know. And you have to play it, very cautious. I did a lot of searching in song lyrics, like where your sweet spot is. And in this one, this is the only one I have licensed song lyrics in. And it's I don't write fantasy. It's just not my thing. But there is a fantasy scene, and it's kind of a nod to the movie Labyrinth, which was my favorite movie back in the 80s. So, like I said, there's a lot of Mandy in these, but in that scene, I wanted the full lyrics, or most of the lyrics from this band from the 80s called Accept. I don't expect anybody but you to know who that is.
Yeah.
But I did, so I did get an acceptance letter, and there's that was approved to have this in here. So besides that, be careful with your song lyrics if you hope to like really make it, because that is never know.
If you don't get approved. Like this.
Right. Yes. So this book, the fun thing about this book, and some people have told me this is their favorite book out of the Trace series because it's big. It's a bigger, broader story. So what I did was, when you said that about, what if Trace was this, I was like, well, what if Trace was a kid? Like, who was he before he was this dark, brooding character?
Mhm.
So he's 6, so he's just an innocent little kid in this. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see when you read it, if you read it. But it allowed more characters to come in, because I just had a few of the same characters in these first books. So it allowed a whole different time period. You got to learn more about the parents. You got to learn about the family and the background of the town. Like, it turns into a whole thing that I did not expect. I had a beginning, middle, and end with the main character of this book, and which is a brother. So it grew, and it's really fun. I don't know if y'all are ever writing something and you think, oh, really, that happened? You're like, yeah, because I said that happened. But I did that with this book a lot, because I kept learning about this town. I was like, oh my god, and I bet this could happen, and this, and so it turns into a whole thing, and it goes back a lot to the 50s even, and all the way back to the 1800s. So I got all that in this one book to kind of encompass like how he became this way. It's not just about him. So again, it's like a stretch beyond that. So it's a different look, but there'll be more. So I don't know, do y'all like, when you read a series, do you like it to go in chronological order, or do you care if it's, you were talking about characters.
It sounds like yours is going backwards.
Mine goes backwards. The first one,
He's
and then
15 and then he's,
he goes back.
yeah.
The first one he's 16, he goes back 15 in that journal, and then it goes back to right after that with this one. So it bounces, and then we go way back, and the next one, I'm kind of getting feedback from which way I should go.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Do y'all like it all over the place? Or
I don't find it.
Yeah.
I again, like with the trilogy I just finished reading. they're kind of all going on the same timeline, but they keep diverging and coming back to each other. So
Yeah.
they kind of show up in each other's stories and stuff. So I haven't noticed it that much when it comes to, oh well, hey, I'm reading about this pair this time. Okay, now I'm reading about the brother and his girlfriend, and then I'm reading about the third brother and his on again, off again girlfriend. So it didn't really bother me personally,
Yeah.
but I think I'd probably be more of a fan of having them in publication order because then you get to see where the author wants to go with it. And if you
Yes.
want to bounce back, you can bounce back because you have a reason for bouncing back.
Yes.
I
So,
definitely would agree with you. I would always read something in publication order,
Mhm.
not necessarily whether or not the story is chronological wouldn't bother me.
My son
Yeah.
saw the Star Wars movies in the actual episode 1, 2, 3.
oh, really?
Because of his age.
Oh.
I mean,
I was gonna say, I
most
don't
of us saw,
Four.
5 to 6.
4, 5,
Yeah.
and 6.
5,
And
6,
then,
1, 2,
and then,
3.
well, exactly, because that's the way they came out. We were liking that, but my son on DVD or Blu-ray saw them in the actual order, and I don't think it had the same appeal to it.
Yeah, there's that punch of, oh my God, I had no idea. That's the kind of
I
thing
think
that you lose.
I like publication order, but I would say I prefer it when the publication order is also.
You wish they
in
would-
chronological order.
Yeah.
I
seriously.
think sometimes, especially like in a series or within one book,
Mhm.
like the really big long flashbacks or jumping back in time, I kind of know what's going to happen. It kind of takes a lot of the suspense part of the story out. I mean, there's other parts that are, that add to your story other than the suspense.
Yes.
But it's like, does anyone ever watch like historical movies or historical books?
Sure.
So part of the stories are like, what's going to happen? But if it's a history, I'm like, I don't really.
It
doesn't work.
unless
I'd
they take
say
liberties
both
with the
things.
truth,
Right.
which a lot of
Yeah.
them do.
I'm watching the movie Dunkirk, and they're like, oh my god, are they gonna escape the Nazis and win the war? I'm like,
Oh my
Yeah. Well, there's people who don't know the history
Yeah.
though, and that's brand new to them.
well, yeah, we want.
So I think maybe the quickest age and I thought you were done, sorry.
No, I'm just saying that there's more to
Yeah.
appeal to, but like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I get that.
No, I kind of get what you're saying because it's like, for example, with the whole Game of Thrones thing, and then they went with House of Dragons, and we're like, we know this is not gonna last.
No, we did not.
Right.
Yeah.
We did not go with that.
Just as a little kid, when I first read the Chronicles of Narnia, and some are companion stories, the Horseman's Boy, you realize it's happening the same time as the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe events are happening. And when we got to the last one, or is it the second to last one, The Magician's Nephew, I thought that was so cool that you got the backstory as to where the wardrobe came from and things like that, and lantern waste, why that lamp was there in the middle of the wilderness. And I thought it was fun. It made a different kind of reveal. So I've never minded that when it came out. But when it's in the narrative, yeah, you lose all the punch in episode 4 of Star Wars means nothing whatsoever because
Right.
because the stories.
Darth Vader's Luke's dad?
No doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody, I'd
Yeah.
say very few people came into that without knowing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. That's,
So
I
that
guess
wouldn't
it
deter me.
depends.
That wouldn't deter me.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the story. And maybe if my second one had not been more of a companion, then people would have been like, I wanted to see what happened next after the ending of the first one. And now you've taken me back to 8th grade. I didn't sign up for that. But I don't know. I think it just
I
depends
think
on
as long as you like eventually do dive into what happened next.
Yes.
As long as you're not just keeping him in 9th grade as a stopping point and you keep moving around.
Right.
Because eventually time has to move forward. Eventually the character does have to grow and change. We can see the cause and effect, but now we need to see what happens with his growth.
And here's the DVD of a character. You'll go wherever the character goes.
Yeah.
That's the thing about going in order, is that you can actually see the character arcs,
Yes. And in that first book, if you would have, at that last page, just flipped, you would be on the first page of this. It's literally that. There's no time lapse there at all. So that's the first of 9th grade, and this is the second half of 9th grade-ish.
One of the things that I'm new, by the way, Aaron. Nice to meet y'all. while you're writing your story, don't feel obligated to describe every circumstance or the reasoning for those things, just like the lamp in the wilderness and those kinds of things, because you can go back and that's what creates your flourish. And
Yeah. Yeah, it fills it out, and that's what, I guess that's what I keep looking, like we talked about, well, what are we missing in the story, you know? So I want the, you know, a book to be about, well, how to, but I love backstories, like when I watch a lot of series too, and so I like it when, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that they went through all this, well, no wonder they're such a jerk, or no wonder this or that, and you can't always fill all that in one book, so I kind of like I like the going back, but I don't know if it was, if it would have been a heavier book, like it would have been a different
So,
type of story.
With bouncing around like back and forth with time, did you start developing like your own rules for Trace of like he's gonna behave this way, he likes these things, he hates these things, he will never involve himself with these things, at least willingly.
Yes.
And how did you go about like basically just building your Bible for that series?
Okay, so it was a little different.
Right now I have sticky notes.
Yeah, no, I get that. So right now it was a little bit different for me because it was in a short time period. Like the story itself was in such a short time period. So it's not always so much as he has changed as the circumstances have changed because you're looking at him at 15 and 16. So where you see some of his innocence maybe when he's writing his journal and he's being vulnerable and let some things out, you don't see that the same way in the first book. But you see how he hardened himself and why he became the way that he did. So, but that all still is in like a year, like, middle of 8th grade to the middle of 9. So he hasn't changed that much, but as it goes, it will. And then, so I jumped to where he's like 6. So, that's very different. So you haven't gotten that to where he's like, finishing out high school and becoming.
Well, it's even like, developing, 15-year-old Trace versus 6-year-old Trace.
Sure.
Like, you have to figure out, like, what kind of words he's going to use at 6 years old
Yes.
versus 15 because I've unfortunately dealt with trying to write children.
Uh-huh.
And I don't write like a child. So I have to sit there and go, they're not going to use that word. They're going to use a different word.
Yes.
So.
And that's a good point though. And I don't know that I was like actively thinking that at the time, but I do know that I don't want to give too much away about this, but he is not the main character. He is the main character in the fact that the story is revolving around him and there's purpose there, but the day-to-day life is focused on somebody else because he is young.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, how much could he bring to the story because it's not a children's story? But I think that the dialogue there is slight, where before he's carrying on, the whole story, but it's a little bit in the background because of that, which I thought was appropriate for a 6-year-old growing up in like a rough household where things are not. You start seeing very early on why there's so much angst and why he doesn't have a good situation. So he kind of lays low and is kind of a little bit in the background. So that I don't think I can write children like that either. I don't know that I have that desire.
Oh, because I dealt with this with another friend of mine, and she was writing 2 characters. One was very book smart, and the other one was the phrase is like emotional intelligence.
Right.
I know it's been a big thing lately. That when she was having me look over it, I was like, girl, your guy, you say he's not the smartest, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. What's he doing using this multi-syllable word?
Oh, you're
Like, it's like there's other words to choose for certain characters, and I don't know if that's just my take of like they're not gonna say those kinds of words. Let's try to find something else kind of deal. I didn't know if you have like certain like phrases or something like that
Yes.
or traits that like he's gonna use these. Maybe if for example, if he is 15, maybe he's gonna swear a little bit. I don't know.
Yes, there is a little bit of that, and then in the 80s, it wasn't as obnoxious as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about that too. It's not, the words were not as prevalent, and a 15-year-old would kind of sprinkle those words back in that time period where it might look different now. And it's like, what's the big deal? But being correct for the time period, that's the way that I did it. But well, all of that kind of brings me to this, which is a standalone book that I did. But it is what I would say is like a giant Easter egg for the book. So again, more information if you want to fill in those blanks, about Trace, but this is something that if you've never read any of the Trace books, it's completely standalone, but it's also, as I say, it's got a lot of information that feeds back
So
to
it's
that
like in
book.
the same universe, kind of.
Ish, because this is actually a book that takes place in the future. Just a few years from now. I don't even specify when because it's not a futuristic story. It's just very, very quick. It's a story about a local journalist in a small town who's trying to get her foot in the door, and so she takes on an assignment for the last traveling fair because fairs and carnivals and all have become obsolete. There's one still going because of safety reasons and just the way society's going. So she's a very, in the box, prim and proper. And so she gets to have 1 week at the fair learning what these people are like. And it's very old school, like what I grew up with the fair, because that's what I had pictured in my head. There's nothing futuristic about this. That's the point of it, is that it's something that's trying to live in the past where it doesn't belong here anymore. But so it's not that these characters so much have anything to do with that story, but there's things that feed into that. So it's ish. I'm just going to completely spoil it if I say any more than that.
Okay.
But anyway, that was fun to.
If there's
write.
metaphorical circles around all of your books, is there any overlap with these and that? I mean, would there be some point you go, oh, you know what, I didn't think it'd be there, but there was that connection. Or is that just a spoiler again?
It's probably.
Okay, well, I think the answer is yes.
This is just all my tactic to get you guys to read my books, right?
Okay.
This is subtle, right? This right here. This is subtle. Actually, my husband had that made for me, both my first book. So I'm trying to make sure that I have, before we get into like what you really do. Let me look at my time here. I've just sort of felt my way through, and I've gotten feedback where I could, but now the person who said they weren't going to write a series, like I can't imagine letting the series go. I'm so connected to it, and it's one that has just really just kept flowing out of me. So it's going to be hard when I put it down, but I don't want to be like, let's milk it for everything. And there was this one time, remember that field trip? I don't want that. That's not what it's going to be. So there will be an end, and I know what the end is. And I've sat on the ending of all of these, didn't tell anybody until I did the book. So it's always fun to have your regular readers read. It's like, I've been dying to tell you this. But anyway, if you don't have any more questions about what I've shared with my stuff, I thought we would get into a broader look at that series in general. We'll do a little bit of some exercises and anything else though while I'm on that.
Did it get easier as you were going with the series? Like, because you knew the characters better?
I think that's probably why it got bigger, because there was more to offer, where in the beginning and you may have missed this, but I took it from a chapter in a manuscript that I had and just stretched that chapter, because that chapter was someone telling a story, and this was their story about a guy they had known, and this was his story of what happened. And so it was no consequence to be in that main book. It could stay there, it could not stay there. It just sort of told where that character was in her life and some of the people she had known before. So I took that out to have something small to start with. So yeah, it's gotten easier in the fact that it's gotten broader, it's gotten deeper, heavier, a lot more stuff to it. I had no idea I was going to get into like the gold rush. I don't even know. Like that's not exactly a spoiler, but yeah. So I didn't know I was going there.
I've got two very.
Don't ask me much about the gold rush because I don't really know.
Anything ever happened with that original manuscript you had? Or is that still
70%
hiding out somewhere?
of it is my book Spiderflies.
Okay, so you did it.
Yeah, but a large chunk, I wondered if I'm it was called The Last Trailer, and I think it would be the prequel to Spiderflies now. So I don't know if I'll write it or not though, because when I take into consideration how many things I've pulled from that, I have 4 short stories published also from that. original book. So it's kind of bare now. And so I don't know if there's enough there that it's actually very important to the Spiderfly story. So I might have to go back to the drawing board. But I have sort of raked through that and I've used it up. So it was great to have something to pull from, because I guess
So my biggest hesitation for writing a series or beginning a series is that once you finish that first, thing, it's
Mhm.
kind of set in stone, right?
uh-huh.
What happens to all the little continuity things that you might maybe do a little tweak here, or you didn't know that you made a change, or all
It's
that stuff.
exhausting.
Right.
That's exhausting.
That's kind of what, kind of has me in knots sometimes where I'm like, oh, it'd be cooler if that was different like this. And it's like, oh wait, no,
The book's already out.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
already out.
it's already
Yeah.
out there.
I was
Yeah.
wondering if you
Gosh.
had any, not regrets, but anything you would change after you're already 4 or 5 books in. After reading them, obviously you were newer and you had less experience.
Yes.
And the more experience you have, not just details in the story, but maybe the way you would have done certain things.
Well, I really think it was a blessing that I decided to go small when I started the Trace series, because if I would have tried to, it allowed for some flaws. I'll say flaws, but it allows for some absence there of later on. If I would have wrote it, I would have probably put too much in it and it wouldn't even be the same kind of story. This was supposed to be, just a quick read, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was going to happen, or that mystery at the end. But yeah, I think that if it was any heavier, it wouldn't have worked for what it was. It's like those, we talked about the episodes from shows in the 80s, that bite size. If it would have been 2 hours, it's like, okay, that's too much. But certainly, so I don't really have a lot of regrets with that, because I think I timed it okay. But with Spiderflies, it was very hard for me to let that go. I worked on that book 17 years off and on, and that was the last trailer. I'm using those kind of interchangeably, but yeah, I thought later on, are you ever gonna let this go? Because I kept thinking, oh, wait a second, I want to tell this, and oh, I want to tell this, because that tells more about this, and I'm like, okay, you're spoon feeding these characters out to people. You've got to leave some blank space, because in the story, so that they can kind of fill those things in, so the reader can kind of have, I don't know about y'all, but I can't stand for somebody to explain song lyrics to me. Don't explain them to me. They can be such a letdown. Like that's just my personality. I don't.
Show, don't tell.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that with that, it's probably good that I just went ahead and let it go, because I probably already said too much in that book, because it's very wordy, as you know. It's a lot of dialogue, which interestingly, I was just telling Chris that I never thought I would do dialogue well. When I started writing, I thought everything's going to be first person, and it's going to be them telling the story, like all journalistic type story. That's why I liked writing that second book so much, because that was kind of my natural way. And then and people in my critique group back then were like, no, you got to have some dialogue. Don't just, once upon a time this. So I started doing dialogue and found out I really liked it. So is anybody else uncomfortable with dialogue?
Actually, I think I have the opposite problem.
Yeah.
I love dialogue because it does
Yeah.
so much heavy lifting. Again, when we
Yes.
talked about like these characters use these certain words. One character may have a speech where he ends up cutting off the ends of certain words,
Mm-hmm.
or you can tell a lot by who's talking by how they're talking.
You're exactly right. And I think now that you said that, I realized that's what I liked once I started doing it. I didn't trust myself with it. I didn't trust myself with dialogue to
Well,
begin with.
I don't have to put tags of when my male character is talking versus my female character is talking, because I have her, for example, she's a lot smarter,
Mhm.
so she is going to use a larger vocabulary,
Yeah, it shows.
and she's also going to be a little bit meaner with her word choice. So
Yeah, there's a lot to be said on that, but I don't know why I was because I'm a chatty person. I don't know why that was so hard for me, but once I got it going, I really liked it. But Spiderfly's flow is very different from these Trace books, so the dialogue there is more simple. I mean, you can't expect, 14-year-old girl in the 80s to have like this huge long thing. There's a lot of quick talk, and some people didn't like the first one because of that, but it's just how it was. I couldn't hear it any other way. So, trying to think if there's anything else I was gonna say on that, but okay, so we talked about who's doing a series. Does anybody have a series already? Like
It's in process.
It's
In
in
process?
progress, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm thinking that's what I wanna do regularly, like I really like,
Mhm.
I really like doing the series.
I mean, mine started like, I had the idea for like in the middle of it, and then I was like, no, I need to like start with how they came together, because like, I think
Yeah.
it would explain a lot more of
So
why
what
they
I
were
was,
start.
yeah, it's, yeah,
Did you ever
is my
think of?
time up?
Oh, no, no.
Is it- have I already done that?
No, I had a question actually.
Yeah.
Did you ever plot what the point of the series was, or did you just want to write books
Oh, there's a point?
set in the universe?
It's not maybe wanted to do it, and that's the point.
No, no, like you're building to something, or it's just a bunch of stories set in the same universe.
Yeah, so I don't, again, I'm not quite sure if this is what you're looking for, but I know for me personally, like there's at the heart of that young adult, cause I even questioned whether I wanted to call it a young adult to begin with, because I knew that teens today might not relate. And we had this great thing called Stranger Things where, well, great for a while, where, everything, all the ages kind of came together for that moment. And I thought, that's amazing. I wish that I could do something like that. But I wasn't gonna call it young adult because, I thought, you know, this, I don't know, it's responsibility. They'll tell you, hey, you need to think about when a young adult's reading something, how are they gonna take it in? And I just can't be responsible for all the teens, I just can't. And
I think
Just
I
can't.
because I think, I was sitting there and I was at, the last event I was at, I was talking with Richard Fierce, and I was talking about whether or not to say that mine is adult or young adult, because I said, hey, there's gonna be like some sketchy situations they get into, and there is, trauma that goes on.
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, is that even appropriate to put in there? He's like, are you going into graphic detail? No. Then you can mention it. That's how it's shaping the character, and move on.
yeah, and it looks very different than it used to. Like, I was concerned, and then I started reading some true young adult. And I'm like, I don't know what you're concerned about because this is mild. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it was the time period. But to get to what you're saying, I always say at the heart of it, it's a lesson to be learned. You play with fire, you get burned. It's you straddle the fence. There's consequences. Like every single thing I write, I don't do any like preachy or trying to make a point in that way with anybody, but I think it plays out for itself. Like all of my books are people making bad choices. I know you're reading my book right now, so it's just people making bad choices at different levels and where that can end up. So that was my goal in writing. Like, you know, if you do this, then this can happen, without saying, don't do this, guys. But you see how that plays out. That's the theme throughout my books. Was that what you meant, or something completely different? Like, you don't even know what you asked now. You're like, I should talk so much.
No, no. I just meant generally like they're all building towards a main event, or it's spiraling from it.
Specifically,
Yeah,
like specifically.
or if it's
for-
just a collection of stories in a time period that come together.
I think it's stories that come together with a time period because of the way that it plays out. It's not like the reveal. Like each book is almost the reveal. You know what I mean? Whereas the series in itself is just going to be a collection of reveals that then put together a big picture for you, and not so much of we were working to this end goal. Is that better?
Yeah.
First and foremost, it was cathartic to you, wasn't it?
That's it. Yes. I thought if no one ever reads it,
I've done this thing.
Yes.
This is my creation.
Yes, and that
It'd be great if everybody would be even greater if millions of people read it and gave me money, but ultimately you just had to get it out.
Yes, that's
So that was maybe her initial goal, was just to fulfill this need.
Yeah, and I'll still sit down, and it's not even the ego. It's just like I'll sit down and look through, and I'm like, yes, that's cool. Like you wrote what you had in your head, and it actually makes some sense. And there's just a good feeling about that. And when people line up with that, like asking questions and saying things like what we talked about, it's really fun to hear that you're all kind of sharing some experience together. So yeah, that's if I'm on an island tomorrow, I hope I'm not, then I'll still ride if I can, because I like it.
Well, they say it's smart to write what you know, but I don't know what fantasy people do because no one's ever seen a dragon that flies.
Maybe they think
Some people can't write what they know if
Yes.
what they write about certain things. But you wrote about being a 15-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And you did a good job, I'm sure. I haven't read those particular books, so I read
Yeah.
Firefly. But, obviously, you could identify and you can sort of put yourself in that person's shoes. Like she said earlier, an 8-year-old with a limited vocabulary wouldn't use a 25-cent word
Sure.
probably. They could have a fantastic vocabulary, but it's not likely. And so you have to learn how to think like the character, to be a realistic for the character, including the spellings you said you did on purpose.
Yes, this is, I don't wanna get away from this, but, I know some of you have mentioned too that I've met Billy Bob Thornton before, which was just very exciting to me. I got to give him one of my first books from the first run and everything, and that was a lot of fun, and I got to ask him some questions about, being a creative person, and so one of the things that he talks about is, that he is, every character he plays, he is that character. He doesn't look up like, I'm gonna try to be that character. He is that. And so if I am this is what I am. This is what I do. If I am a 15-year-old boy, if Mandy is a 15-year-old boy, that's what she's doing. If Mandy is an adult carnival worker, this is what she would do. So you're making yourself be that. And I related to that so much. But that's a perfect point. Okay, so let's explore some thoughts and challenge those thoughts as we discuss some of the more basic ways that are not Mandy influenced. They're just about writing series in general. Or tell me when. Yeah, no, that should be good. Okay, so I did look up several things to kind of see what are the common denominators when people are writing a series, how to go about that, and I just sort of pulled that collection together of what I was finding to be the most common. I understand if you're not looking to write a series at all, some of these things might be, I've given some paper. Does somebody else need some paper? Do you use some paper? Do you want some paper?
Sure. Oh, are we gonna write today?
Yes, we're gonna write a little bit. These are just, you're good. Anybody else? Yeah, if you need a pen, I have a pen. So try to consider, if you don't have an idea yet, but you are thinking about, hey, this sounds kind of neat. Maybe I do want to write a series. I didn't know I wanted to write a series. Like that's how I was. So we're just gonna jot down some stuff, and then we'll do an exercise maybe too, if we have time to. But so start with a clear series concept. That's what you're gonna do first. So mine, as we said, was a single chapter in a manuscript. It came from truth, in a way, whether it stayed there or not. So you talked about, we talked about how to write. You write what you know, but how do you do fantasy? So you take something and you make it fantastic based on like a seed of truth. Is what I do. So if you have an idea, then use this time and these prompts to explore your plans. If not, let's pretend you have an idea and just come up with something now and kind of draw inspiration from that. So I want you guys to think about your series. This either you have a series going in your mind, or just right now you think, okay, what if this? So just for the fun of it, I want you to define your series in one tight sentence. That's always hard for me. Do you have trouble like the back of the book blurb? Does anybody? Because I want to say, and then this, and then this. And
She's saying it's a whole series, like imagine it's 3
Yes.
books, 1 sentence for 3 whole books.
Yes. So this concept, the idea is it should be strong enough to guide all books and answer the question, if I only had this line, could I still tell what changes from book 1 to 5 to book 5?
One sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't, this was what I found was something that was helpful for people. That one sentence is hard for me, so I'm not saying it's easy. But in other words, does it keep you in one book? Okay? Because that can happen. Like if it's wrapped up in one book, you don't have a series, you don't have a reason for a series. What's broader than that? What's higher level than that?
Rewriting it as if it was explain to a particular person or to encompass the 3 works or the
Yeah,
multiple works
just,
at once?
yeah, just,
Multiple works.
mhm. They pretend you have an agent, they put you on the spot, I'm your agent for the second. We'll take another minute at that too, so I know it's not a long time, but. Okay, guys, we may have to come back to this later, which I'm hoping you will go home and then like all these thoughts are gonna come to you and think, I've got an idea. But, was that hard? Was that super hard? Yeah.
I liked that it's pushing you to really look at that, the biggest
Yes.
picture.
The biggest, yes.
I like that.
Yeah, and then you can take that and tweak it from there because it might sound like, you know, love conquers all, we're my books, love conquers all in the 1980s, but that's very broad. Then you can start tweaking that, like what makes this different because you don't have the same old story. Okay, so here's another thing. Next, let's choose a series structure. So we talked about structure before. Mine was out of order because that's what it worked for where I was. But if we're choosing ahead of time, let's do it your way. Your way is better in planning. So decide if your series is chronological, seasonal, or in 1 week. I talked about this book here being all takes place in 1 week. With most standalone and interlocking characters, it's suggested to set 6 to 10 major series beats to map the overall arc, is what they say. So we're gonna do the quick version for now. Just number it in your page 1 through 6 and start there. And just sort of see what comes to you as like the punch notes, like, does that make sense to y'all? I don't wanna define that too much, but basically if you're taking it and then you're narrowing it down, okay, this happens, this would be this book 1, we wanna talk about this. Book 2 is gonna showcase this. So my book 1 would be introducing a story, and book 2 would be, you know, a backstory for one character, so forth and so on.
So these are books or story beats?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it did say story beats, and then I went into books, but I like doing it, let's do it with books first.
So it's kind of like the idea we just did, but instead of doing all 5 books, now you're doing
Yes,
one
now,
for each
yeah.
book.
How
So-
is each one, I actually had that as the next one, but let's flip flop. So you how do each of those books pull that story together? How do they speak to that story individually? So,
Right, so like Lord of the Rings, book 1 would be
yes,
the
use that.
hobbits leave the Shire.
Yes.
Book 2 would be, etc.
Yes, and you may not be able to think of 6, that's a lot. But, anyway, the idea to me of any of this creative processing is just to get some ideas, get you thinking. Let's take about 3 minutes on that. Maybe I can get something. I'm trying to watch the time. did that help to be able to break that down and not have to be so broad? Is that easier, or did you blank out?
Kind of helps to see how the story will progress through the series versus just how you would approach one singular book.
Yeah, and I think too, like when you're home and in your quiet space or whatever, that motivates you and you're not on the spot in the classroom stuff, you might think, okay, that sounded kind of boring. I would like to rather say this, but it kind of gets you started.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's trouble sometimes for a lot of people. It's just that getting started.
Do they necessarily have to be the main characters in the books that you have mapped out? Because I have a couple where my group of adventurers might be side characters after the story.
Yeah, I think that's your own edit. Like
Okay.
you're not there yet. I mean,
Okay.
just, in consideration kind of thing.
Okay.
And bounce around. And maybe that becomes more clear when you are getting that out there. So now if you outline each book with its own arc, like I pantsed, I don't know if pantsed is the word, the heck out of mine. So as I was going along, I was like, yeah, I've got an idea for that first story. I had the idea, and then after that, I kind of saw where it was going. Now I feel very clear of where it's going. But I would say after that third book, I was like, okay, I know where I'm gonna go with this. But as I'm writing it, I'm like, and then this happened, and this happened, and I'm like, I have to tighten that up. But yeah, I didn't plan each step. But if you are planning, which classroom setting, going over things like this, it's easier to plan. So let's say that we use a 5-part beat plan per book. Lay it all out like your outline before the book outline. So you've got your book outline, but now right now I want you to consider the setup. Then what is the pressure? Maybe do you want me to write these up here?
Yeah, sure.
I have serial killer handwriting, so y'all bear with me. Okay. What is the pressure?
So you're saying for right now, just take one of our potential books in the series?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or it depends on how you want to look at it. Or you can take that in general, but I think it's going to really vary from book to book. So just for this, I would take like book 1. Focus on book 1. So what is the pressure to, what is the midpoint turn? Where are you going with that? Am I walking this?
Yeah. you're good.
3, a dark moment. What might be a dark moment? And you may even just like jot these down as they come, and that's not, they say to think of what comes to your mind first. You can clean that up later or make it messy or whatever, but just to get a form going, just to get you in that practice. So a dark moment, and then what is the climax? Then important in a series, what is the next book promise? Or maybe even the intrigue, but why do you need a next book? That's what I think, looking at all this, you decide, do I have another book in me, or do I have a series in me? Because another book's gonna wrap everything up, the broader picture, all within one book. And you've got to think about breaking those down and how each book is its own, all of these. And so what do you want? Obviously from the first book that I wrote, I didn't expect them to want it, but they wanted to know, okay, so what happens next? So if you end with a mystery, then that would be the next book promise to explain. Well, I didn't do that. So I broke the rules. I didn't give the next book promise. They wanted to know what happened next. I gave them what happened beforehand so that they would still be intrigued. So again, this is a good structure when you're planning from the beginning to write a series. Y'all know what I mean when I say that? It's like, even though I didn't do it that way, and you can do it any which way, but if you're planning, these are the basics. So, I'm just gonna give y'all just a couple of minutes to write this down, or would you like to do this? Is that something that you would like to do at home? You have, like, you can spread that out a little bit better. We talked about, developing a character Bible and more. I do have this now, but I did it after, I did it after the fact. Surprise. I was reading, when I go to write a new book in the series, I read back through the last book before that. But then when I was doing the tracks of trace, I had so much, again, material with documents and such. So when I was looking at dates and everything, when I went to write my most recent book, I was like, oh my gosh, you almost made the difference in somebody being in high school or college, which is huge. I also almost made somebody not alive because of a time period. So you gotta really watch that. So where I thought I was helping myself by going ahead and laying all this out, and it was just something that was helpful to me and to the reader. Well, I had said specifically, not every book's gonna say when somebody was born or where they were born, but it was a dark scavenger hunt. These were clues, these were helpful, but that really pinned me down to certain things. So you have to be careful of that. In a perfect world, you just read through all of yours before you wrote the next one, right? I do a lot of listening to my own writing, if y'all do that in Word, where you just listen back because you think you're reading it, you think it's there, just because your mind put it there. When you hear that aloud, it really does help a lot. So that's something to do at home and to work on even a loose character Bible. You know, we've talked what would this person like and where are they from and where did they go to school and all that. Build a world, excuse me, I'm sorry I put a mint in my mouth, but my throat. So I built this world Bible in a way, but again, my first few books, it would have been very abbreviated because it was in a short time period and with just a few characters. So it really depends on what you're doing, but important, maintain consistency. We just said that. Keep your tone, your voice, and character traits consistent. Make sure you reread your earlier books, but get in a critique group, guys, or have some friends that will tell you the truth, or they'll say they were not doing this, and you have them over here, and this character would never do that. That is the worst. Like I said, I watch a lot of series too. It is very disappointing when your character, you think it's your character, but when you're watching a character and you're like, they would never do that, and somebody just wrote it in all willy-nilly, it's very upsetting. So you certainly don't want to do that. Close each book like it matters. Resolve the main plot and character's immediate problem. Believe 1 to 2 questions that connect to the series arc. This creates a clear next book promise that we talked about and reason to continue reading. So beyond the creativity, let's wrap up some of the practical things. Plan and pacing. What do you set a certain time that you write? Do you hold yourself accountable to that? Or do you write when you feel like it? I write when I feel like it. Sorry, that's not what I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to say I set so many hours. I literally left the workforce to write, and it's still, I can't do it. I'll have morning time when everything's quiet. This is not my pen. When everything is quiet, and I think this is perfect. And then at 12:30 at night, I'm like, I got it now. So that's how I do. Do y'all do the same thing, or are you very diligent?
Somewhere between those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll set times for myself to write, but then there's other occasions where I'll just wake up and I'll just go, okay, hang on.
You know what I end up doing? I check my email, and if I say, hey, you're gonna sit here and write, I'm like, oh, let me check that. Let me check social media. I should have posted this stuff. And I get into that whole more administrative type thinking. Yeah. Do y'all have this down? Is this okay to? Yeah, so that's hard for me to do. It's, when I don't feel it, I think what I end up doing is have way more rewrites. You know, I'm like, golly, that was boring and
If it's
lame.
not inspired, it's gonna be weak.
Yeah, exactly.
My muse comes when he comes. And
Yes.
when he does, I answer, but I can't, it's not on schedule.
Yes, I agree. So,
When I try to write and I'm not feeling it, I end up deleting a lot of things.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
when I do feel it, I reverse the deletes. I'm like, oh, wait, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't need to delete all that stuff.
And you might can get this much done in this amount of time, but it's not, I don't know.
So I found myself writing in my head and my notes, like when I get home from work, about 4:30 or so, I'll be writing. So I guess I've been pre-writing that whole time.
Yes.
And I sit down and just
It's a good idea to at least have something to hold yourself accountable, because a series is a long ongoing thing. And so after your drafts, do a series sweep, check ages, dates. We talked about that, locations, and unresolved subplots. Let somebody else help you with that, because it can be a daunting task. And some of you are writing a lot of heavier books than what I started out with. I mean, young adult, I'm not saying that it can't be heavy, but it's its own animal. But and then consider the genre suitability. Some things lend themselves more to being a series than others. So you want to look at that too. And I have some information too that I'm gonna have for you guys to take home, so you can look up. You know, you can take this with you to, I don't know, a friend or a critique group, or anywhere you think you've got a couple of people to help you out. This is going to give you some ideas for some exercises that we obviously don't have time to do all the things today, but I hope that this got you sort of thinking more about a series, and maybe whether you might want to do a series. We talked in the very beginning about the upcoming workshop. Do you know specifically how they're going to break that down, or is it going to be an overview? Are you quite sure when they talk about?
So they're gonna break it, basically, the workshop in half. So,
Okay.
you know, she actually offers a workshop on each of these topics. But as
Okay.
we were describing, you know, our members and, you know, what they write and, you know, if they're published, where they're published, how they're publishing. So she came up with the idea of kind of mashing the two workshops together so that the self-publishing side can hit, you know, a large percentage of this group, but then also, you know, there's, you know, the marketing is gonna help the self-publishing, but also those who are interested in traditional publishing. So,
Okay, because I was just thinking that, you know, if it's not set up to where you have to be ready to publish or anything like that, then you're getting that broad reach of information
yes.
for when you do get ready. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I think that'd be really good.
Mhm.
But just look at one activity that I had hoped we had time for, but write down a pitch as a single standalone book, and then write the same story, the same idea as a series pitch, and see how the plot changes. Like, do you come up with more ideas for that? Like, do your characters evolve? Because you're thinking in terms of, once again, breaking down what we talked about before into all the different parts. So when you come up with your pitch, does it sound like it wrapped it up in that one book? And that will kind of give you an idea too. Another thing is to think of a genre that you think of as series friendly, and try your hand at that. But I know a lot of us, I know I'm like this. I'm not going to venture it. If you say write even horror, I'm probably not going to know how to go about it. So if you said write fantasy, I'm not going to know. I'm not going to do that. But if you can, if you're at a place where you're still just thinking things out, maybe explore that idea of writing a series in a different genre than what you normally write in, because it might be easier. So.
Thank you.
I hope that was inspiring to you guys. It might not be for you at all, but it's at least going to get you to thinking maybe about writing a series. That sounds vicious. Okay, Tim, did you have something else?
I wanted to thank everybody for coming today. Our regulars and our newbies, thank you so much. Please make sure that you guys sign in before you leave, so that we can reach out and see what you might be looking for in a writer's group.
Thanks for having me.